For 4 years, Eric Aguilera had come and gone from Woodall Innovations, like air through a vent. Useful, invisible, never questioned. He arrived before the sun did. He fixed what was broken before anyone knew it was broken. He replaced the ceiling tiles, calibrated the hallway sensors, and kept the fourth-floor server room from flooding without once sending an email to announce he had done it. 460 people worked in that building. Not one of them knew his last name. That was simply how things were. So on the afternoon his phone buzzed in his chest pocket, he was on a ladder, 3 rungs higher than the ladder was rated for, pressing a new tile into a water-damaged grid on the 6th floor. He assumed it was his daughter's school. He assumed it was a reminder about a bill. He did not assume it would be anything that mattered. He read it once. He read it again. He climbed down from the ladder very slowly and stood in the empty corridor and read it a 3rd time. The message was from the executive assistant of the chief executive officer of the company. The CEO wanted to see him. Tonight. 6 o'clock. 42nd floor. Stephanie Woodall had built this company from almost nothing before she was 30. Analysts called her relentless. Journalists called her brilliant. Her employees, in the break rooms and the stairwells where honest conversations happened, called her untouchable. She did not summon facilities technicians. She did not know facilities technicians existed. Eric stood in the corridor for a long time. His daughter had taught him a breathing technique from a video she had watched at age 8. 4 counts in and 4 counts out. And he used it now, pressing his palm flat against the wall, asking himself the same question on every exhale. What could she possibly want with him? He did not have an answer. He straightened his collar. He took the elevator up. Before we continue this story, we want to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell us where in the world you are watching from. We love knowing how far these stories travel. And if something in this story is already speaking to you, please hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs it, and subscribe so you never miss a story. Before we continue this story, we want to hear from you. Leave a comment below and tell us where in the world you are watching from tonight. We love knowing how far these stories travel. And if something in this story is already speaking to you, please hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs it, and subscribe so you never miss a story. Now, back to Eric. Eric Cruz Aguilera was 34 years old. He had brown eyes that tilted slightly down at the corners, giving him an expression people sometimes mistook for sadness. It was not sadness. It was the face of someone who was always thinking. He thought constantly. That was one of the things that had not changed. He had been born in Sampaloc, Manila, in the Philippines, the second of 4 children, in a house that had never been quiet a day in his life. His father had been a barangay official who sang too loudly at family gatherings. His mother, Consuelo, had been an elementary school teacher who kept her lesson plans in a battered green folder she had used since 1991 and saw no reason to replace. Eric had grown up believing in hard work the way other people believe in religion. They had been not rich, but never hungry. He had understood the difference early. He studied civil engineering at the Polytechnic University of the Philippines. He graduated 3rd in his class. He spent 7 years designing drainage systems and flood barriers for the National Housing Authority in Metro Manila, the kind of infrastructure work nobody noticed until it failed. If you were good at it, it never failed. He was good at it. He also, at 26, married a woman named Clara who taught kindergarten 3 blocks from his office and made him laugh every single day without trying. He had not thought much about luck before Clara. Afterward, he thought about it constantly. Clara died in 2017. Dengue fever, caught late, treated in an understaffed public hospital during a month when the city's medical resources were already stretched past their limit. She was 27 years old. She left behind a husband who did not know how to cook anything except rice, and a daughter, 18 months old, who would not remember her face without photographs. Eric named his daughter Liweiwei, which means dawn in Filipino. It was the name Clara had chosen before she died. He called her Riley at school and in the city because Riley was easier on a registration form, and because Riley was what Liweiwei herself had decided to answer to at age 4, after a firm conversation with a daycare teacher who kept apologizing for mispronouncing her name. He arrived in the United States in 2019. He had been told, by the recruiters who handled his visa paperwork, and by the general mythology of this country, that credentials recognized by international engineering boards would transfer cleanly. They did not transfer cleanly. The American licensure process for foreign civil engineers required examinations he could not afford to take while also working full-time and raising a child alone, in a country where he knew no one, where the grocery stores were the size of aircraft hangars and everything moved at a speed that felt, in his first months, less like efficiency and more like a kind of low-grade panic that nobody talked about. He took the only job that did not require a license: facilities technician, building maintenance. At Woodall Innovations, where 460 people worked on floors, he kept functioning. He replaced ceiling tiles. He calibrated HVAC systems. He repaired the elevator doors on the 9th floor that stuck every time the temperature dropped below 40 degrees. He was very good at his job. He had been passed over for the senior technician position twice in 3 years. Once because of a credential question on the promotion paperwork. Once without explanation by a man named Nicholas Reyes, who had been in the building for 18 months and had never replaced a ceiling tile in his life. Eric earned $47,000 a year. His rent was $1,300 a month. He sent $300 home to his mother Consuelo in Sampaloc every second of the month, without exception, because she had high blood pressure and her medication was not free, and she would never ask him to send it, and he would never stop. After rent and remittance, he had approximately $800 left each month for everything else. He was very organized about the everything else. A co-worker on his floor, a woman named Misty who managed the supply room on the 3rd floor and made coffee every morning for whoever showed up first, was the only person at Woodall Innovations who knew any of this. She knew because she was observant in the way that people become observant when the world has not been particularly kind to them either. She never said anything about it. She just always made sure there was coffee left when Eric came in at 7. Riley was 8 years old. She attended the elementary school 6 blocks from their apartment, where she was currently the 3rd best speller in her class and had been campaigning for months to move to 1st place with the focused ambition of someone who did not accept ceilings. She spoke Tagalog in fragments, the way you speak a language you learned in a house where one parent was the only carrier and that parent was always tired. She understood more than she spoke. Sometimes, when Eric said something softly in Filipino, he would catch her face arranging itself into quiet comprehension. And it struck him, each time, as the most tender and shattering thing he had ever seen. On the kitchen shelf above the stove, wrapped in a cloth cut from one of Clara's dresses, Eric kept a small wooden figure, a santo, a carved statue of the Blessed Virgin that had belonged to his grandmother, brought from the province of Laguna 3 generations back, the paint worn to a whisper at the crown and the hem. It was the only thing he had carried in his hand luggage, rather than checked. He had told the customs officer it was decorative. It was not decorative. He was not a man who complained. He was not a man who asked for things. He was a man who showed up before anyone else and left after everyone else, and fixed what was broken without telling anyone about it. Because he had come here to give, not to take. And he had made that deal with himself somewhere over the Pacific Ocean in 2019, and he intended to keep it. He had not expected this. He had not expected any of it. The Woodall Innovations annual company gala was held at the Regency Grand Hotel on a Friday evening in late October. Eric was required to attend. Not the way executives were required to attend, meaning obligated by ambition and the need to be seen. In the way facilities staff were required to attend, meaning they were on call in case the hotel backup generator needed resetting or a private dining room developed a plumbing situation. He had been given a single drink ticket and told to keep his radio on. He lasted 40 minutes in the ballroom before the weight of being simultaneously present and invisible became a specific, physical pressure behind his sternum. 400 colleagues in clothes that cost more than his monthly rent. A room that smelled of imported flowers. A string quartet playing something he vaguely recognized and could not name. He found the hotel bar through a corridor off the lobby. A narrow, low-lit room with mahogany walls and a bartender who did not ask questions. He used his drink ticket. He ordered something called a Malabar Sling because the name made him think of warm water somewhere that was not here. And he sat 2 stools from the end of the bar and tried to locate something inside himself that did not ache. He had been there 17 minutes when he noticed the woman at the far end. She sat in the corner stool with the precision of someone who had chosen that position deliberately. Dark blazer, hair down, a glass of something amber in front of her. She had the particular stillness of a person who was not resting but hiding. He recognized it because he had the same stillness. She noticed him noticing. "You're from the gala," she said. It was not a question. "One of the invisible ones," he said. That made her look up properly for the first time. Something shifted at the edge of her expression. There's more than one kind of invisible. Her name, she said, was Stephanie. She did not volunteer anything else. He did not ask. Because the bar was dark and the gala was loud, and sometimes a stranger is just a stranger, and that is exactly what you need. They talked for a long time. 1 drink became 2, 2 became 3, the 3rd became a 4th, and somewhere between the 4th and the 5th, the conversation went somewhere that conversations in dark bars sometimes go. Past the surface of things and into the underneath. Past the careful versions of themselves they presented to the world every day, and into the real ones. He told her about Riley, about Clara, about the ceiling tiles and the 2 promotions that had gone to other men. She told him about the loneliness of rooms that went quiet when you entered them, about success that felt, from the inside, like a kind of solitary confinement, about the exhaustion of being needed by everyone and truly known by no one. They were both, he realized, hiding from exactly the same thing. The bartender called last drinks at midnight. He did not remember, later, who moved first. He remembered warmth, the smell of her perfume, a room that was not his, the specific mercy of not being alone for a few hours. In the morning, he woke to an empty bed and a missed call from Marie next door, who had Riley. A single note on the hotel pillow. "Thank you for last night. A friend." He drove home. He picked up Riley. He buried it all. 6 weeks later, the email from Peggy Solis arrived while he was on a ladder replacing a ceiling tile. The office was enormous. That was the first thing Eric registered. Then the floor-to-ceiling windows with the city spread below them. Then Stephanie Woodall standing with her back to the door, her hands gripping the edge of her desk, her hair down the way it had been in the bar, and the specific quality of her shoulders under that silk blouse telling him, before she even turned around, that something was very wrong. She turned around. He had never seen her face in daylight, had not fully processed who she was in the low light of the bar, had recognized her only vaguely, the way you recognize a stranger from somewhere you cannot place. He had not placed her because she had not been who she was that night. She had been just a person. She was not just a person. "Mr. Aguilera," she said. Her voice was rough, scraped clean of command. "Thank you for coming." He sat when she asked him to. She did not sit. She walked to the window. "Do you remember the gala?" she said. "6 weeks ago?" His stomach dropped. He remembered. "I didn't recognize you." The words came out in pieces. "The lighting was different, and I had only ever seen you from a distance, and I never would have. I didn't know who you were." "I know." Her voice stopped him. "I didn't call you here for an apology. What happened that night, I wanted it just as much as you did." He closed his mouth. She turned from the window. Her face, he could see now, was blotchy beneath carefully applied makeup. Her eyes were red at the edges. She was shaking. This woman who had built a company from an idea and $7,000 and 6 years of 18-hour days. She was shaking. "I'm pregnant," she whispered. "The baby is yours." The room did not move. Everything in it simply stopped making sense for approximately 30 seconds. Eric heard the words the way you hear news that is too large for the moment it arrives in. Pregnant. Baby. Yours. He had been here before. Not this office, not this woman. But the feeling of the ground shifting beneath a life he had very carefully arranged. He knew that feeling. He had been standing in a hospital corridor at 2 a.m. when he had felt it last. "I've confirmed it with 3 different doctors," she said. "I'm 8 weeks along. I debated telling you. I didn't know if I should." She pressed her knuckles to her mouth. "I still don't know what I'm going to do." He was quiet for a long time. Then, very slowly, he asked, "What do you want?" She looked at him as though the question was in a language she had not been taught. "I don't know," she said. "I haven't allowed myself to want things in so long that I am not sure I remember how." He looked at her. He looked past the office and the magazine covers and the company whose floors he mopped, and he saw what he had seen in the bar that night. A person who was exhausted. A person who had been alone for a very long time. "You don't have to have the answer right now," he said quietly. "And whatever you decide, I will not disappear." She blinked. "You don't have to say that." "I know," he said. "I'm saying it because I mean it." He told her about Riley, about how you can love someone so much that it reorganizes everything you thought you knew about yourself, about the promise he had made standing over Clara's grave before he left Manila, about his own father, who had never once left, not for a single day, and what that had meant to the shape of him. Something in her face changed. "You're serious," she said. "You really won't run?" "Running is not something I have ever been good at," he said. She searched his face the way you look for the seam in something before you trust your weight to it. Then she nodded, small, careful. "Okay," she said. "Okay." Outside, the city hummed. 2 strangers in a room that smelled like leather and consequence, both of them trying to figure out how to survive the next hour. "You know what this is, don't you?" she said quietly. He did know. He had been carrying it for 6 years, since he stood in an international arrivals terminal with a toddler on his hip and a suitcase full of credentials that no one here would honor, and felt for the first time what it was to be completely alone in a place that had no intention of noticing. The particular weight of a life that nobody sees. She had been carrying the same thing. A different shape, a different country, but the same invisible weight. He nodded. He did not say anything else. He did not need to. The first prenatal appointment was at a private clinic in a neighborhood where even the trees looked like they had been planted by someone with a portfolio. Eric arrived in his work clothes because he had come directly from a repair job on the 9th floor. He stood in the waiting room among couples in matching athleisure and felt the specific texture of being the wrong kind of person in the right kind of place. Stephanie arrived wearing an oversized jacket and sunglasses, checking the room before she sat down. "The sunglasses are a lot," Eric said. "I am a lot," she said. They both almost smiled at that. What happened 3 weeks after the appointment was not small. Eric arrived at work on a Monday morning to find Nicholas Reyes waiting by the service elevator with an expression that suggested whatever he was about to say had been rehearsed overnight. "I need to ask you something," Nicholas said. "Off the record." Eric waited. "People are saying things about you and Miss Woodall." Nicholas could not finish the sentence. Eric thought about everything he could say. He thought about the weeks of secrecy, about Riley, who had noticed he was keeping something and had been watching him with the focused patience of a child who has learned that waiting is the most reliable path to truth. "I can't discuss that," Eric said. Nicholas's jaw moved. "Do you understand what this looks like? People are going to think you engineered this, that you found a way in." Eric looked at him, not angry, steady. "I fix ceiling tiles," he said. "I have never engineered anything in this building except the drainage backup system on the 4th floor, which I did without being asked because it was going to flood the server room within a month, and no one was paying attention. That is the only thing I have engineered here." He walked away. But 3 days later, his access badge stopped working on the upper floors. And the day after that, Christine from Human Resources sent him a calendar invite with the subject line, "Discussion regarding professional conduct." He sat in Christine's office while she explained, in the careful language of someone reading from a script approved by legal, that his presence had become a subject of concern. That associations between executive leadership and non-executive staff created challenges. That there was a voluntary separation option available to him. 4 months of severance. Excellent references. When she finished, he said, "I have done my job without a single complaint or corrective action in 4 years. The only thing that has changed is information about my private life." Christine looked at the table. "Mr. Aguilera, I understand your position." "Then you understand," he said, "that I will not be resigning." He learned later that it had been Ronald, Stephanie's COO, who had pushed for the HR meeting. Ronald had been managing the company's public communications around the situation, and he wanted it resolved quietly. Eric filing an objection was not quiet. That night, after Riley was asleep, Eric sat alone at the kitchen table with the little Santo between his palms, the carved Virgin no bigger than his fist, the paint worn smooth at the places where his grandmother, and then his mother, and then he himself had rubbed her with worry. And he was honest with himself in the dark, in a way he could not afford to be during the day. He was tired. He had been tired for 6 years, and he had not stopped. He put the Santo back on the shelf. He went to bed. He did not tell anyone how tired he was. He had come here to give, not to take. He did not know, yet, that this was about to change. If you are watching this tonight, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a story. And we want to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between your pride and asking for help? Did you make the right call? Tell us your story below. We read every single one. Now, let's go back to Eric. The anatomy scan was at 20 weeks, on a Tuesday afternoon when the light was gray and the city smelled of rain that had not yet arrived. The doctor, a calm woman named Dr. Joyce Tan, moved the ultrasound wand across Stephanie's stomach and narrated what she saw. Brain, heart, kidneys, spine. Each organ a word that hit Eric somewhere beneath his ribs. Then Dr. Tan paused, repositioned, and smiled. "You're having a girl," she said. Eric did not breathe. Stephanie made a sound that was not a word in any language. Her hand found his, ice cold. She gripped hard. A girl. He was going to have another daughter. He looked at Stephanie's face and saw something he had not been prepared for. The executive vanished. In her place was just a woman, 31 years old, staring at the screen with tears moving steadily down her face, and something that looked like terrified, disoriented joy. In the weeks that followed, the distance between them compressed, the way distance compresses when two people are circling something enormous. They met for coffee, then for dinner, then, one evening, Stephanie came to his apartment. She stood in the doorway a moment, taking in the photos of Clara on the walls, the Santo on the kitchen shelf, the crayon drawings covering the refrigerator. Something in her face went very soft. "This is an actual home," she said. He did not know what to say to that, so he said, "Sit down. I'll make merienda." He cooked the way his mother had taught him. Arroz caldo, rice porridge with ginger and green onion, and the specific smell of it that meant home in a way that nothing made in this country ever quite did. He did not make it for guests. He made it because Riley had been sniffly all week, and because he was anxious, and cooking was the one thing that still made him feel like himself. Stephanie sat at his kitchen table and watched him the way you watch something you have not seen before. When he set the bowl in front of her, she looked at it, then at him. "What is it?" "Arroz caldo. My mother made it every time anyone in the house was sick, or scared, or had done something they regretted. It covers most of life's situations." She ate it slowly. Her face changed with the first spoonful. Something settled in her. "It tastes like being taken care of," she said quietly. He sat across from her. "Yes," he said. "That is what it is supposed to taste like." Riley appeared from the bedroom a few minutes later, still in her pajamas at 7 in the evening, because she had declared that Tuesdays were pajama optional, and Eric had not found the energy to argue. She looked at Stephanie with the direct, uncalculated assessment of an 8-year-old conducting a formal evaluation. "You're the one with the baby," Riley said. "Riley," Eric said. "It's okay." Stephanie looked at Riley. "I am. Your dad tells me you're the best speller in your class." Riley sat down at the table without being invited. "I'm the third best. But Mia Figueroa only wins because she reads the dictionary on weekends for fun, and I think that should be classified as cheating." Stephanie smiled. "A real one." "Fair point." They argued pleasantly about whether supplementary studying counted as cheating for 20 minutes. Eric sat between them and felt, underneath the anxiety and the complications and the fact that his access badge still did not work on the upper floors, something he could only describe as warmth, a specific warmth he had not felt in a long time. Later, after Riley was in bed, Stephanie sat with her hands around a mug of tea and told him about a pregnancy she had lost 6 years ago, a marriage that had ended badly, a baby born too early who had lived only 4 days, the way her own mother, Joyce, had told her in the hospital 3 days after the funeral that she had brought it on herself with her workload. She said it in a flat voice, the voice of someone who has processed a thing so many times it has become administrative. But her hands on the mug were white at the knuckles. Eric thought about his mother calling from Manila the month he had arrived in America, asking if he had eaten, if Riley was warm, if he needed money, knowing he would say no, sending it anyway. "May ina ka pa rin," he said quietly. It came out in Filipino, the way things do when you reach for something that only exists in that language. You still have a mother. Stephanie looked at him. What does that mean? He considered. It means you still have a mother, even when a mother makes mistakes. It means the door can still open. She looked at him for a long time. Then, very quietly, tell me about your mother. He talked about Consuelo for an hour, about the green lesson plan folder, about the way she sang while she cooked, about how she had held Riley the one time Eric had been able to bring her back to visit when Riley was 3 and had not put her down for 2 days. Stephanie listened with the focused attention of someone being given something they did not know they needed. When he stopped, she said, You should know that I'm not very good at receiving things. I know, he said. Neither am I. Then we're well matched, she said. He looked at her. She looked at him. Between them, in the space neither of them had yet crossed, something shifted that could not be shifted back. Joyce Matheson Woodall arrived at Woodall Innovations on a Tuesday morning with a leather briefcase and a purpose. The news reached the 42nd floor before she did. Stephanie found out her mother was in the building when Peggy knocked on the office door with an expression that combined diplomacy with genuine alarm. Your mother is downstairs, Peggy said. She says she has information about the situation. Her words. Joyce Woodall was 63 years old and had the specific authority of someone who had been the most formidable person in every room she had entered for 4 decades. She carried a folder. She set it on Stephanie's desk. Inside, neatly organized, were photographs. Eric arriving at the prenatal clinic. Eric leaving Stephanie's apartment building. Eric sitting in his car outside Riley's school, waiting. Someone had been watching. I had him looked into, Joyce said. A foreign national on a work visa with no professional license recognized here. A maintenance position he has been passed over for promotion in twice. A daughter in the public school system. Remittances to family abroad. He has no assets. He has no professional standing in this country. And now he has a claim on your estate through a child. She paused. Ronald agrees with me. A settlement offer has been prepared. It is generous. Stephanie looked at the folder. She looked at her mother. Get out, she said. Stephanie, get out of my office. Joyce left. She left a business card on the desk with a number written in pen. The settlement figure. Stephanie sat alone with the folder for 40 minutes. Then she called Eric. He came immediately. He always came immediately. She showed him the photographs. She told him about the settlement offer without telling him the number. She watched his face. Eric looked at the photographs for a long moment. He thought about 4 years of ceiling tiles. He thought about 2 promotions that had gone to other men. He thought about the HR meeting, the access badge, Christine's careful language. He thought about Misty leaving coffee for him every morning without ever saying why. He thought about Riley, who had packed her own lunch that morning because he had left early for a repair call, and who had put a sticky note on his coffee cup that said, in her careful printing, "Have a good day, Tate." He thought about $300 on the 2nd of every month, and Consuelo's blood pressure medication, and the Santo wrapped in cloth on the kitchen shelf. He had come here with nothing this city valued. He had given everything and asked for nothing. He had buried who he was so far down that some mornings he had to remind himself he had once designed bridges. He looked at Stephanie. I will not take money to leave, he said. I did not come here for money, and your mother does not get to decide what my daughter deserves. Something broke open in Stephanie's face. Eric. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I need to tell you something. She told him the rest of what her mother had said, the part she had not passed along, that a man with no credentials recognized by this country, no security beyond a monthly paycheck, was not a stable influence. That the kindest thing Eric could do for his daughter and for this child was to remove himself cleanly. Eric was quiet for a long time. Then he stood up. He walked to the window. He looked at the city for a full minute. "I designed flood barriers," he said, "in Manila, 17 of them across 3 districts. I have never seen my name on a single one. Buildings I calculated the load capacity of are still standing. No one here knows I exist." He turned around. "I am not invisible because I have nothing to offer. I am invisible because this country placed me somewhere it could not see me. That is not the same thing." He looked at Stephanie. "I will not disappear. Not for a settlement, and not because your mother has decided I am not enough. What I am asking you is whether you believe I am enough." The silence that followed was the longest of his life. Stephanie stood up. She crossed the room. She took his hands in hers. "Yes," she said, "I do." That was the moment. That was the whole story, collapsed down to its center. A man who had carried everything alone for 6 years in a country that could not see him, being seen. He had come here to give. He had come here to need nothing. He had crossed an ocean and buried everything he had been and built a life out of ceiling tiles and remittances and a little girl who packed her own lunch and believed in him without reservation. And now someone was asking him to receive. He let her. The confrontation with Joyce Woodall happened on a Saturday afternoon in Stephanie's apartment, and it was quieter than Eric had expected. Joyce arrived with the same briefcase and the same posture, but something was different at the edges of her. A held breath. Something that had been thinking all week. She apologized. Not easily. The words came out in the labored, precise way of someone dismantling something they had spent years constructing. She had met a woman that week whose daughter had not spoken to her in 11 years, she said, because of exactly the kind of interference she had attempted. She did not want that. She looked at Eric. "I was wrong about you," she said. "I categorized you by the facts on paper and not by the man in front of me." He nodded. He said he accepted the apology. He did not say anything else. He did not need to. What happened in the months that followed did not happen quickly, or easily, or in a straight line. A baby girl was born on a cold April morning, 3 weeks early, in a hospital room where Eric held Stephanie's hand until she could not feel her fingers, and Riley sat in the waiting room with Marie and a chapter book she did not read, and Joyce Woodall paced a corridor for 4 hours in expensive shoes. They named her Christine. Riley had suggested it from a list she had assembled over 4 months of research, presented in a color-coded document Eric had not known how to respond to, except by laughing until his eyes watered. Stephanie had done the same. Neither of them could explain why it hit them both that way. Christine just felt right. Christine Aguilera Woodall weighed 5 pounds and 9 ounces. She had dark hair and her father's eyes, and she announced herself to the world with the conviction of someone who had opinions about the temperature of the room and intended to be heard. By summer, they had found a house. Not a penthouse, not a place that looked like a showroom. A house with a backyard and a kitchen that smelled like cooking, and 3 bedrooms and a 4th that Eric converted into a space for Riley's science projects and his engineering drawings, which he had begun taking out again, slowly, in the evenings. He was studying for the professional engineering examination. "You're going to pass it," Riley told him, with the absolute certainty of an 8-year-old who had never once considered that he might not. He intended to. On a Sunday evening in August, Eric called Manila. His mother, Consuelo, answered on the second ring, as she always did. He could hear the television in the background. the specific sound of a Filipino variety show. Laughter and music in another room. "Kumain ka na ba?" she asked first. "Have you eaten yet?" "I ate, Nane," he said. He told her about Christine, about the house with the backyard, about Riley's spelling bee trophy, second place this time, because Mia Figueroa had been bumped to the gifted track, and Riley had promoted herself to the top of the regular division with characteristic efficiency. He told his mother that things were good. He said it the way you say a thing that is true. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Mahal kita. I love you." And then, "Proud na proud ako sa'yo. I am so proud of you." He pressed the phone against his ear and looked out the kitchen window at Riley in the backyard, showing Christine's carrier to the neighbor's dog, narrating the introduction with the patient formality of someone conducting official proceedings. Christine's small face was turned toward the evening light. Misty from the third floor had come by earlier with a dish she called a welcome casserole, which was really just an excuse to meet the baby. And Eric had let her stay for an hour and felt, for the first time, something that resembled a community. On the kitchen shelf, the Santo stood in the open, paint worn to a shine at the crown, no longer wrapped in cloth, no longer hidden. He had carried her across an ocean. She had been with him through everything. It seemed right that she should be able to see the kitchen now. Eric Cruz Aguilera had come to this country with a civil engineering degree that no one here would honor, a child on his hip, and $300 more a month than he was technically allowed to keep. He had been told, in 1,000 different ways, that he was temporary, that he was a service function, that he was a credential question on a promotion form, that he was a liability to be settled. But he had known something those people did not. He had crossed an ocean to get here. He had packed his grief into a bag, and his daughter into a seat, and his grandmother Santo into his carry-on, and he had arrived. He had already survived the hardest part. Everything after that was just learning to take up the space that had always belonged to him. Thank you so much for watching this story. If it moved you, if it reminded you of someone you know, or something you have carried, please give it a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe so you never miss a story, and leave a comment below. Tell us what part stayed with you. We read every single one, and your words matter more than you know.